Hi, and welcome back to our reading of The Red Lion by Maria Schepers. It's been a while again since last time. I've added some coffee stains to the book, and it's been a long, cruel summer. The Bananarama one time sang, which has nothing to do with this. Actually, it hasn't been that bad. But there seems to be something, as we're getting closer to the end of this book, that it's been harder to get there. And certainly for our protagonist, he's about to go through some of the things he doesn't want to go through, but still are the key for his victory in this life. So the next chapter is number 42. It's the Lion's Claws, and we're going to cover, it's a short one, as is 43, named Isabelle. And we'll get to both of those. And if you want to get right to them, just jump ahead. And I have been thinking about what we're going to do once we're done with this book, which should be in this and another 2 episodes, I think. And then we'll get on with another book. Now, one of our trusted viewers, whom we appreciate very much, has suggested that we go into The Brother of the Third Degree, which certainly is an excellent suggestion, and I do want to do that. However, things seem to be turning in a way where I've had a lot of thoughts and had the book A Dweller on Two Planets come up from various angles, and it is, in just as all this alchemy and all these mystical things have a flair of the, say, magic from the Atlantean continent and the high civilization there many years ago. Somehow it seems to be time to look back at this book, which was a breakthrough in, let's call it, newer times for our understanding and the collective wisdom and knowledge of the Atlantean culture. Like one of my friends said, it's extraordinary that the book even exists. It's given to, at the time, a very young man. I think he was 20, Frederick Oliver, in 1886, when he completed the book in its first version. Given to him by a master, an adept from Atlantis, an ascended master, if you will, Phyllis the Tibetan, for whom Frederick Oliver was an amanuensis. I'm not going to go terribly deep into it, but it covers lots of interesting technology, some of which we've seen since the book's publication, but thinking that this thing was written 100 and almost 50 years ago, I mean, the things that, the foresight, and which proves to really be a hindsight, right, yes, was really extraordinary. And so I have started reading it over the last 20 plus years, couple, 3 times, and never gotten very far into it. So I feel like it's time for me to read it, and I'll bring you along if you want to follow. And so I'm going to go out on a limb before we go back to the Red Line. Like I said, jump ahead to chapter 42 if you really want to. But the great folk singer Donovan, back in 1968, he wrote a song called Atlantis. And it's about what's there way down below the ocean. The continent of Atlantis was an island which lay before the great flood in the area we now call the Atlantic Ocean, so great an area of land that from her western shores those beautiful sailors journeyed to the South and the North Americas with ease, in their ships with painted sails. To the east, Africa was a neighbor, across a short strait of sea miles. The great Egyptian age is but a remnant of the Atlantean culture. The antediluvian kings colonized the world. All the gods who play in the mythological dramas, in all legends from all lands, were from fair Atlantis. Knowing her fate, Atlantis sent out ships to all corners of the earth. On board were the 12, the poet, the physician, the farmer, the scientist, the magician, and the other so-called gods of our legends, though gods they were, and as the elders of our time choose to remain blinded. Let us rejoice, and let us sing and dance and ring in the new. Hey, Atlantis, way down below the ocean, where I wanna be, she may be way down below the ocean, where I wanna be, she may be way down below the ocean, where I wanna be, she may be way down below the ocean, where I wanna be, she may be. She may be. But before we get there, we have to make our way through the lion's claws first. I guess that's the red lion's claws. Huh? Chapter 42, the lion's claws. And a quick recap, right? He had just sent away Ernst Müller, who was the son of Anna Müller, who was the reincarnated Corinna, the seductress of Paris, now in a simple peasant woman's body. Of course, we have nothing against peasant women. But going from being this ultra-sophisticated, super sensual woman, as our protagonist had known her in Paris and been completely smitten of her, now he had met her in her more honest form, as a very simple, not very developed soul. And her son, Ernst, had made his way to Cornelius and tried to steal his alchemical knowledge, just as a reflection of him, like the last chapter was called The Mirror Reflects the Past, and which basically where Ernst is a reflection of who Cornelius was when we first met him in this book as Hans Burgner. Okay, the lion's claws. I soon found an excellent way to forward my plan. For some time, I had corresponded with Jean-Marie Ragon, the outstanding Belgian mystic, and together we had established a lodge in Brussels. I had met him through Saint Germain, who thought a great deal of his occult abilities and intelligence. When the business of the lodge called me to Brussels, I decided to take Ernst with me and get him a good clerical position there. I knew the city would attract my student like a magnet, and the sooner he submerged himself in the ocean of astral passions, the sooner he would rise from it. At first, I told Ernst only that I meant to travel and take him with me. I didn't mention my other plan because I wanted him to feel that accepting the new opportunity would be his own idea. Ernst's joy was boundless, and his fevered preparations took his whole time, even distracting him from his studies. Time and again he told me he could never repay what I had done for him. We started in March 1801, passing on the way the inn where Ernst's mother served. I wondered if he would ask to visit her so he could show off his new finery, but he drew back into the carriage and wouldn't even look out the window. He abruptly grew silent. "What is the matter?" I prompted. "I hate this place," he burst out. "I thought you might want to see your mother." "I never want to hear of the place again." "I understand," I replied. Hans Burgner had felt the same way. I had calculated correctly. The city of Brussels captivated Ernst, and I saw to it that he had free time and money to spend while I worked with Ragon. When he had his fill of sightseeing and public entertainments, I took him to meet some of the high-ranking families. The magic name of the order opened all palace doors to me and ensured a cordial, hospitable welcome. We began to attend fine evening parties I would never have gone to on my own, and Ernst became immersed in the atmosphere of refined splendor and immense wealth and the assured bearing of the chosen caste. He had never seen anything like this at austere monastic grotte. Suddenly, beautiful women with skin like fragrant petals and dazzling jewels buzzed around him. He began to hear delicate yet playful and enticing words directed at him, and an assortment of wines, spices, and exotic dishes tickled his palate. The brilliant, ostentatious splendor of these gatherings would have crushed a more sensitive and sophisticated person, but it inspired Ernst and set his sensuality aflame. He was as self-confident as though he was at last on his own home ground. I was surprised at how easily he assumed a supercilious, aristocratic demeanor. He handled the ladies with a sure, easy hand, arousing them with his hungry, disrobing eyes. It was as though he and not they were experienced in the sophisticated art of love. Here was a casteless nobody, the illegitimate son of a servant, bridging the social gulf like a skilled tightrope walker. He used his excellent powers of observation to store everything he heard, then use it selectively at the proper time. People began to notice Ernst. They thought him original, unusually intelligent, and dangerously attractive. And he really was all that. He ported and played like a lion cub, but already his bloodthirsty claws and teeth flashed experimentally. I discussed my plans for Ernst with Ragon. We agreed that his employer must be selected carefully. First, we had to make sure there were no young women in the household in any capacity. Eventually, we decided on Charles de Blancourt, a wealthy old bachelor who was an avid book collector. He was anxious to hire a reliable, educated young man to supervise his library and find rare books for him. The old man's love of books and generosity made him an excellent choice. De Blancourt was no real student of the occult, just an avid amateur. He did not practice in any way. Since Ragon had helped him get rare books and was an erudite companion, de Blancourt was more than ready to perform a favor for him. De Blancourt made his offer to Ernst in the midst of a splendid party at his palatial home. He offered the boy a salary, luxurious appointments, and considerable free time if he would take on this pleasant and comfortable job. It was all a not yet established young man could dream of. Still, Ernst asked time to think it over. When we got back to the hotel, he asked if he might come into my room to discuss an important matter. He was pale, and his manner was humble. I knew what he was going to say, and I knew how I had to answer him. He told me about de Blancourt's offer, and I congratulated him on such great personal success. I am well aware of the advantages of the position, Ernst stared at me sternly, and I passionately love everything he offers me, but
I'd give it all up without a second thought if you would continue teaching me and give me some hope that someday you would initiate me into the most important secrets of life. They are the only things that really matter. Well, I can at least give you a straight answer, Ernst. If I could give you a single spark of hope that I could initiate you during your present life, even in old age, I would tell you to stay with me, but I can't. I could only help you start. Your goal is still far away, many lives and deaths away. I wish I could tell you something different, for I have grown fond of you and I shall miss you. But the best advice I can give you is to take de Blancour's offer. Grotte could not give you any more. He stood up, a picture of anger and despair. Then, what is it I need to do to be found worthy of the opus magnus? Am I not intelligent, persistent, and hardworking? Oh, I admit my passions defeat me, but I would subjugate them all for the great goal if you would but give me the word. Have you thought of the lengths to which you might drive me? I shall never stop seeking the occult, regardless of what it costs me or anybody else. Why don't you lead me down the straight road? Because it is better for you to go through the detours of experience that will purify you. Otherwise, you would leave the straight road at a later point and use your occult knowledge for the wrong purpose. I do not doubt your intelligence and persistence, and I know you will never cease your search for occult secrets. When you arrive at the point where you can win the keys to the 3 gates of knowledge, I know you will make outstanding use of them. But there are other things you must do first. I am not belittling you by refusing. It's just that I cannot give you these forces to use in gratifying your passions. You see, these forces can be used properly only by adepts who are beyond the temptations of passion. I know you're bitter and feel I've misjudged you. If I have, I'll gladly admit it. The best way for you to prove me wrong is for you to remain steadfast and keep on working without my making you a definite promise. Actually, you can get closer to your goal if you don't stay with me. If you stay on the straight road all by yourself, that would be a definite indication of maturity. Let this be a trial. Prove me wrong and I will share all my knowledge unconditionally. He rose. All right. His response was serious. Should I contact you or will you send for me when you realize you were mistaken? I will contact you, Ernst. You need not doubt that. So Ernst took de Blancour's offer. For several months I received regular long letters from him in which he faithfully recounted every thought and action. The youth had an original and colorful style, and he could give very droll descriptions of the people he met. He respected de Blancour and adored his work, throwing himself into it wholeheartedly. For a while he was interested in nothing else. Ragon also wrote me favorable reports. Ernst seldom left the house, he reported. Instead, he spent all his free time reading and making notes. De Blancour liked the boy and appreciated his efforts, for he had managed to get 2 rare books the old man had wanted for years. He was glad we had recommended him. Then, toward the end of the year, Ernst's letters became less frequent, though Ragon was still sending me good reports. Ernst was still doing well. In fact, he was, if anything, overworking. De Blancour began to worry about his health, for he had lost his appetite and had difficulty sleeping. The old man urged him to relax, but Ernst would not hear of it. The brief letters he wrote me revealed that Ernst had found something that occupied him greatly, something he didn't want me to know about. His broad script narrowed and the letters now angled backward, indicating a withdrawal from society and concentration on some subject. Then I knew that Ernst had left the straight path. Chapter 43, Isabelle. When Ernst had been in Brussels for 3 years, a tragedy occurred that at last revealed the young man's secret: dangerous activity. At this time, de Blancourt received a visit from his younger sister who lived in England, and she brought her daughter Isabelle with her. Ragon said that Isabelle was a cold-mannered beauty, tall and slender, with darkish blonde hair. The grey eyes and vivid lips of this extraordinary girl contradicted her apparent coldness. But she was wickedly witty. There was tension between Isabelle and Ernst from the time they first met. The girl was wealthy, spoiled, and sophisticated, and she took every occasion to make Ernst feel like an upstart. It was her custom to make him the butt of her sarcastic jests during meals. According to Ragon, Ernst bore up with remarkable self-control and frequently managed to get the better of the girl with his agile responses. Isabelle was engaged to Lord B, the eldest son of one of England's oldest houses, and upon her marriage would have a close connection with the royal house. Yet there was no doubt she was intrigued by this handsome lad of impossible background. She used her scorn to discharge this attraction and convince herself she could not possibly be interested in him. Ernst responded with polite reservation and avoided her whenever possible. This was the state of affairs that brought about the tragedy. There began to be a change in Isabelle. She no longer threw scornful jests at Ernst, and she seemed quiet, listless, and inattentive. Soon she became noticeably pale, and her lips grew dry and bloodless. Her mother, thinking she pined for her fiancé, planned a speedy return home, but Isabelle would hear nothing of it. She even wanted to stay longer than had originally planned. Her mother could go home without her. Then Isabelle's mother got a letter from Lord B asking about his fiancé, who had not answered his letters in weeks. The girl was undoubtedly sick, but she protested desperately when her worried family sought to call in a doctor. When they sent for one anyway, she locked herself in her bedroom and could not be persuaded to come out. Now de Blancourt and his sister were thoroughly alarmed and bewildered. They suspected some emotional involvement, perhaps a love affair, but they could find no evidence among Isabelle's acquaintances in Brussels. During the last few weeks, she had withdrawn completely from Brussels society. The truth came out in Isabelle's suicide note. The girl had taken poison and was dead when they found her. She had addressed the note to de Blancourt, and Ragon was the only person outside the family who ever knew the truth. De Blancourt gave him permission to send a copy of her statement to me. Isabelle had begun by asking that de Blancourt stand by her mother and support her in her time of sorrow. Then she asked him to cover up the affair and use his influence to find a doctor who would certify death of natural causes. Finally, she told her story. Isabelle's story. It started 2 months ago on September 2nd, a warm, overcast evening. I could have chosen between 2 invitations, but I had a slight headache and didn't feel like going anywhere. I felt weighed down and oppressed. At dinner, I sat opposite Ernst Müller as usual. Every time I looked up from my plate, he was staring at me, as had been usual of late, but that night it annoyed me greatly. For some reason, I could not think of the scathing sentences with which I usually pricked this conceited busybody. I could not but despise him because he always cunningly pretended to be a much grander person than he was. There was something strange in his face that night, and his eyes burned with hatred. Also, I can say it now since it doesn't matter any longer, and I want you to know what a horrible thing this monster has done in stealing my will from me. His glance rushed through my veins like a living fire. I was desperately ashamed and worried by this sensation, but I could not defend myself against its perverse attractiveness. I was filled with a mad yearning. He was repulsive and revolting. I hated him. If I had been in full possession of my mental faculties, he could never have conquered my resistance. I became very drowsy after dinner, so I retired early. I don't know how long I slept before I was awakened. But that's not the proper word. Only part of me awakened. My will and memory still slept. My body raged with burning desire. I heard someone call my name softly. Isabelle, come, come to me. The voice intensified my desire. I trembled and cried out with the pain of it. Then the inner storm washed my will and memory away completely. I awoke fully to a situation so horrible and crushing, I can't even describe it. I found myself on Ernst Müller's bed, dizzy, defiled and bleeding. My body was scratched and my shoulders bore marks of human teeth. There he stood by the ravaged bed, illuminated by the light of a candle. In a cold, commanding voice, he told me to return to my room quietly, since the servants would soon be up. Then he added that he was sure I would be sensible and not change my manner toward him publicly. I burst into tears and began to berate him savagely, using words I did not know I knew. Rushing up, I beat his chest with my fists. He shoved me back onto the bed. Shut up. After all, it's more important to you that you not be found here than it is to me. What a little wild cat. She uses her teeth and nails in love and her fists in hate. Scornfully, he bared his chest to show me the marks on his neck and shoulders. Now get out. I'll call you again. I almost fainted with humiliation, but I managed to drag myself back to my room, moaning. My one thought was that I must quickly dress and go to the river and drown myself, but as soon as I got to my room, I collapsed in exhausted sleep. My mother woke me at noon. I told her I was sick, so she let me stay in bed, but she stayed with me. It was evening when she finally left. I felt desperately ashamed when she kissed me, and I longed to cling to her and to that bright, sunny young life I had lost in the night. After she left, I prayed for a long time, then began dressing to carry out my purpose. Yet while I was dressing, I felt again the sweet, debased yearning that conquered everything in me. I heard the voice again. Come, Isabelle. Nothing else existed for me except the voice and my raging passion. Before dawn, I awoke to find myself in Ernst Müller's bed again. That was what kept happening. Every day I started to go kill myself, and every day I defiled myself yet again. Once I was right at the river when the monstrous puppeteer jerked me back on his thread of dark passion. But now I've got some poison and I'll take it the first chance I get. I have no other recourse, for my will is completely broken. He has infected me with desire as with a plague. Now I lust after his cold fiend's face and muscular body, even in the daytime. I find myself being jealous, and I await the night with a terrible, joyous anguish. Also, I know I'm pregnant. That is the final blow. I cannot remain alive and bring such shame to the parents and fiancé who so trusted me, or give birth to Ernst Müller's unwanted bastard. I, Isabelle de Blancourt-Wells, by my own hand. Ernst disappeared without a trace when Isabelle committed suicide. He probably left Brussels altogether. Ragon and I both realized what had happened. Ernst had found a large collection of books on sexual magic in de Blancourt's library. This exposure had been fatal. His natural sensuality and ambition had sucked him into the womb of the dark forces. He must have practiced for months before the Isabelle incident. I could calculate his progress almost exactly from the change in his letters. Now, this unfortunate suicide had proved the success of his labors. Ernst was dangerously talented in this area. He had enormous sexual energy, great intelligence, and diligence in all he pursued. What he did not know or wouldn't believe was that the dark forces always turn against the one who uses them and avenge all at once the injuries he has done to others. In the meantime, he could cause many tragedies, for he was loose in the world with supernatural powers. Of course, he could only assault women who were morally weak and passionate, but how many women are truly strong? Ernst Müller would bring them bitter suffering with his evil pleasures, but he would stiffen their resistance in their next life. There was no stopping him now. He was on the downward path and would have to reach bottom before he turned in the right direction, just as Hans Burgner had. Isabelle's death may have shaken him momentarily. Perhaps he even understood my attitude now. But again, maybe he blamed me for putting his temptation in his path. I was sure he never meant to drive the girl to suicide. He had just wanted to humiliate her. But the forces of black magic always drive the sorcerer who conjured them farther than he meant to go. They become independent and use him to ravage and destroy. He may think they serve him, but in actuality they direct and will finally crush him. So that's the end of chapter 43. So don't get involved with the black magicians is the moral of that story. And more on the black magician in our next reading. Thank you.